So today I am going to talk a little bit about something called collaborative problem solving. And, we're living in these extraordinary times right now. And so we can spend a lot more time with our children than we're used to. So that is a blessing, obviously, in many ways. But it can also be a challenge, especially if our children are used to seeing their friends in school, if they are used to just having time to themselves. And we as parents, of course, are used to having time to ourselves as well. Most of us, some of us homeschool, so it's different for us. Um, so, yeah, I just like to talk about this method that I've learned about that helps when any kind of behavioral or challenging behavior comes up in our family life. First of all, I would say, because we're living in this extraordinary time, it's a real opportunity to bond even greater with our kids. Spending time outside as much as possible. It's springtime now, so everything is in bloom. I went out yesterday and all the tulips are completely popped. So, any opportunity you can to just be outside, just be in the fresh air. And even if it's raining, take your kids outside, splash in puddles, just feel invigorated by life, because we have to spend so much time indoors that any chance we can get outside, I would really recommend doing that with your kids. One thing that I teach wilderness skills also, and there's one activity that you can still do with your children, which is to find a place either in nature or in your backyard, on your roof, even just at the windowsill, if nothing else, and just observe what's outside your window or what's in your backyard, and sit there for like 10, 15 minutes separately. Your child has their place, you have your place, and then come back together and then just talk about what you noticed. What did you notice? Was there a cardinal that came to visit? Was there a wind that was coming from a particular direction that you noticed? Did a neighbor come outside and wave to you? Anything that can keep you connected to what's going outside in the world. So I just wanted to start with that, because these are very different times than what we're used to, and the challenges are different. So generally, when we think of challenging behavior, I'm just curious what you guys think about that. When you have something that your child is doing that irritates you, what is your first sense of what to do? Anybody can chime in there.
Well, I'll chime in. What I do, or what I have done, my kids are grown now, but what I have done is to see, first of all, is their behavior disrespectful? Is it like, are they being very disrespectful to me or to any of their siblings or even to themselves? And if they're being disrespectful, then that's one thing. And in my mind, it's like, then I have to gauge to what degree it is, and to put a stop to it right then and there, because in my mind that's not tolerated.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not being disrespectful, if it's just something that I'm like, oh geez, why are you doing that? Why can't you sit still? Then I see, well, what is it you want to do? I start asking them a lot of questions about what they're thinking, what they would rather be doing. Is there something that happened 15 minutes ago that now they're thinking about? And is that the reason for their behavior? Because if it's something like that, then we can, kind of flow our way through it. Um,
Yeah.
and if it's something that, we parents need to um, hone up to this. If it's something that is irritating me, but actually, if I was doing that, it would be okay, then I have to ask myself, why am I being triggered?
Right.
Why am I being irritated? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those 3 points I usually try to look
Right.
at first. Yeah.
Well, Suzanne, you brought up a lot of great stuff. So I think the first thing is self-care, because that is so key. If you are not taking care of yourself, you're going to be triggered so much more easily
Yeah.
than if
Yeah.
you meditated, if you've given yourself a shower, if you've done your self-care. So the first thing you said is was it I stopped the behavior? Oh, the disrespect, the
Yeah.
disrespect. Yeah. Let me just
Yeah.
address that, because in this philosophy, the first thing is empathy, right? So the first idea is to not come at your child combatively. Now,
Yeah. Yes.
easier said than done, right? But
Yeah.
if we have self-care and we are able to do that, to come at it with empathy, we can ask our kids what's going on. Like you had mentioned that later on, that you then find out later on, let's troubleshoot here. Let's see what we can do to solve the problem. And that is the root of it. So you're way ahead of the game for understanding that you have to sit down with your child and have them come up with solutions. That is the core belief in this philosophy. But before that, you want to gain their trust. You don't want them to think, all right, she got her dukes up, so I'm going to get my dukes up too, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so the idea is to, and easier said than done, but uh, that's the key, is if you can get them to have an emotionally regulated state so that you're able to have
Right.
that kind of
Right.
conversation with them. And
Yeah.
so there are some key phrases that, when I'm triggered, for example, it's really hard for me to be in that place. I will be honest with you. So I
Yes.
have learned some key phrases that really help me when I don't feel like being empathetic. So I could say something like, hey, what's up? Or what's going on? Or did you have a snack yet? I mean, it depends on the age of the child, obviously, but when you bring it back to them where you're immediately interested in them and in what might be going on, then there's a doorway that opens up.
Yes.
So I wanted to share that because that is kind of the guts of it. So if they are angry and if they retreat and say, I don't want to talk about it, then you retreat. Sometimes we do have to sacrifice respect, and that's a real, then it can spiral out of control, right? We don't want that. But if we don't have their respect, then it's very difficult for them to give us respect. Um,
Mhm.
so, um, so there are a lot of ways that we generally deal with challenging behavior. So there is the I'm going to stop this right now approach, or there is the I can't deal with this. I'm just not going to deal with it at all. The passive aggressive approach. So the approach that collaborative problem solving likes to use is this idea where we tease out what's going on with our children by empathy, B, asking a question if they're not coming forth with any kind of ideas. And the question is really simple, like if they, for example, want to keep playing a video game. Now, this is one that I know we all are struggling with. And there are no easy solutions, but sometimes there is a way for you to say, for you to ask, what, first you're engaged. You say, what is it about the game that you like so much? And then again, you're getting their trust. You're showing interest in something that they're interested in, because often our kids don't think that we're really interested in what they do anyway, right? So like, why should I tell her anything? She doesn't care. So showing interest is really a really good first step in whatever it is. And then stating your concerns. So if you're saying, hey, you know, I really want you to be able to have your time and play your game, but you can't really play into dinner time. That's just, it doesn't work for me. We have to have dinner together as a family, or whatever it is. Maybe it's just they're playing beyond their time, or you know, it's too loud, or whatever the issue is. Maybe it's too violent a game and you want them to switch to something else. So you can state your concern, and then they can state their concern. And maybe they're going to say, well, I don't care. I don't need to have dinner at 6 o'clock. That's your problem. So you can say, yes, you're right. That's my problem. But what we're doing here is we're figuring out a solution that works for both of us, right? Because we live here together and we need to find solutions that work for us both. So then you start to brainstorm, and if they pull back and are really not into it, this has got to be authentic or it's not going to work. So if they're pulled back and you sense that they're not buying it, you know, then pull back and just say, okay, well, let's discuss this another time. But the point is that you're showing interest, you're building trust, and then eventually the idea is that they will be able to have a conversation and want to come to a solution together. You know, there are many different scenarios, and I think the thing that we need to understand is that children aren't always doing things because they want to act out, because it's willful, or they want to manipulate us. And I know, you know, we feel that in the moment, but it's usually a more complex reason. Usually there's something, some kind of lagging skill is what Ross Greene calls it. Let's say they, you know, they get frustrated really easily, and they don't know how to regulate their emotions. There might be some language problems, like maybe just they don't have words, you know, maybe they're so keyed up or angry that they don't have words. You know, maybe they're rigid in the way they think about things, and they're not able to see your perspective. So in that case, there's, you know, so all of these are different perspectives, and so it's a different opening for you to work with your child. But the key is to understand what their lagging skills are, so that you can then start to work with them where they come up with solutions, but underneath you're prodding them along because you have that awareness. And now that we're in quarantine with our kids, we have so much more opportunity to see how they learn, to see where their challenges are, to see, you know, all these things that we couldn't if they were just in school and we had this set routine with them. So there are like these 5 sets of lagging skills. And so I mentioned a few of them. The executive skills are the organization and planning, and where the emotions get in the way so that they can't think through solutions. And then not having words, emotional regulation. So then the other piece of this is what's triggering them? You know, what's underneath this? Is there another sibling in the house that maybe they're fighting with? Is there an abusive parent in the house? Is there an unrealistic expectation of what they are supposed to be doing? You know, that maybe they just can't meet that. And we're demanding and demanding, but they're not really able to do it. So whenever we get stuck, we always just come back to empathy. If you're having these kind of conversations and you're kind of like feeling like, yeah, but I said this and you said that, that just forget it. Just come back to, I understand. I understand. Repeating what they're saying is good. So if they say, I just want to play longer, you can say, you just want to play longer. I understand that. And if you don't know where to take it from there, then just say, I understand. I think we can come up with a solution. Let's revisit. Let's come back to this maybe tomorrow. And so slowly, when you do, like maybe they start to say, maybe they don't even want to play this game for as long as they are. Maybe they want you to come in and turn this thing off. I'm using this gaming thing, but we can actually take this anywhere. And in fact, I'd like to hear from some of you and what your actual challenges are. But they might be tired or thirsty. So understanding what the needs are underneath are really, really key in helping our children. So the basic steps are the empathy and reassurance that you understand what your child is going through, even if it seems illogical, even if you're like, what the, you know, just go with it. And then the next step is to define the problem, clarify it clearly, restate it for him or her, clarify it. And then the key here is that you want to clarify both perspectives, not just your child's perspective. You want to clarify your perspective, and you want to make sure that your perspective stays in the equation. This is key, because this is where we often get lost, is where we just either want to, you know, give our kid what they want, or we want to be the Lord and ruler. So this is also good for our partners too, in general, if we can do this. And then the third step is to brainstorm together. You know, what can we do about this? And again, letting your child take the lead as much as possible. But if they're stuck, you might have a little prodding to get them going with some ideas. I think that's the gist of it, you know, for 20 minutes. I'd love to open it up and see what some of the actual struggles are, if anybody wants to share, maybe one or two if we have time.
It's me. Like we have, can we put maybe 5 more minutes? And right now, like real example, my little one came to me and he took my cable for my charge my phone, and I tried to say like, please don't touch. And I was like, okay. So it's a little I have a lot of passion, but sometimes, like you say, Taryn, is you know, self-care. I think it's the most important, because you know, I have 4 kids, complete different age, 21, 18, 12, and 8 years old. 9 years old, I'm sorry. And sometimes I need to negotiate with them. I don't know if it is good or not, but right now, and especially with this situation, the little ones, they are, you know, everything changed. And now I feel like we are really close, and they want me 24 hours, 7 days.
Yeah.
So this is my situation right now.
Yeah.
And like you say, right now, I'm next to my window, open, try to relax and my time for the meeting.
Yeah, yeah. That's great, Sarai. You brought up a lot of great points. What I forgot to say is there are certain things that I think you have to be firm about. And so there is, there's plan A where it's, this is the way it is. You've just got to fall in line. There's plan B where you collaborate, and there's plan C where you let it go for now. So in these times, and especially if you have 4 kids, or Suzanne, you have 7 kids, yours are grown though. Yeah, it's important to have some limits and some boundaries. So, there are certain areas of life where you can collaborate. There are other areas where you cannot. And you're working, you need your time. So this is an area where there has to be firm boundaries. And so you can say to your children, this is an area where I'm sorry, I cannot negotiate. I need to get my work done. I need to earn a living. And that is completely fine. The areas where we collaborate is where it's a behavior that's ongoing. Do you know what I mean? And usually we can tell that there's something underneath there. If it's a safety issue, if it's work related, there's, in my opinion, there's really no negotiation if the child can't understand how important that is. And then the other thing is, in these times, there's a lot of stuff we can just let go, right? Behavior wise, we don't have to nitpick every single thing. Our kids need space now. They need to know that, they need to process their anxiety. This is the other piece right now that I wanted to bring up. So some ways for them to regulate their emotions could be, Zariah, to ask them if they, what do they like to do? Do they like to draw? Do they like to journal? Do they like to maybe play a game with each other? If you have a list that you can have at hand for them of things that they like to do, that can be really helpful. And processing, if you have time together, when you're done with your work, maybe you can draw together with them, or you can journal together with them. One activity that I find really helpful is journaling. So you journal about your feelings. You ask your child to journal about their feelings, and you do the same. And then you ask them to journal your feelings or their brother's feelings, so that they can start to have multiple perspectives and be able to start to feel empathy for not just themselves, but get a wider scope. Another tool that I really like is when our children really have trouble putting words to their feelings. There is something online that I found through nonviolent communication that's called theexercise.org. And what it is if you have had some kind of argument with your child, you ask your child to write down the statement that really hurt your feelings. And you do the same. And then underneath those statements, you make a T and an F. Or is it a T or an F? Feelings and, an F and an N. So you write down all your feelings that came up for you when this hurtful thing was said to you. And then on the other side, under N, you write down your needs. What were you needing in that moment? And then you flip the paper over and you do the same thing for your child. You put yourself in your child and you write down the statement that hurt their feelings that you said. And then you put all the feelings you imagine they were feeling down on one side. And then you put down all the needs that you felt they weren't met on the other side. And this is a beautiful exercise. I've done this for years with my own son. And then you give the paper to each other, you know, if they're old enough to read and to process this. And then you have this beautiful discussion where, because things are written down and it's not face to face, you're not confronting each other, there's something beautiful can happen where there's an understanding. And there is a list of feelings and needs on that website that you can have in front of your child if they're not able, like they're going to say, oh, I felt sad, or I don't know what I was feeling, I don't know what I was needing. They can just go through the list and choose and say, oh, that one feels appropriate, so write that one down, or that one feels appropriate. Yeah, Zaraya, I hope that was a tangent, but yeah, some things are just not negotiable, and then other things we can let go in these times. But the key is, because you're spending so much more time with your children, it's really an opportunity to get to know them a little bit better and understand their patterns better.